Spoiler alert for Mushoku Tensei Volume 2. If you haven't read it, I suggest you do so before continuing on to this video. Rudeas has now left his home village, in hopes of growing more in terms of magic. But little does he know, the trial that he has to overcome is a big one. Hello everybody, this is the Anime Bro here, and welcome to another video. And today, I'll be reviewing Mushoku Tensei Volume 2. Now before this video starts, please like, share, and subscribe for more videos just like this. And come back next time as I continue on to Volume 3. And now, let's begin this video. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the story. Now if you've already seen my video on Volume 1, then you already know how this is going to go. And if you haven't, then click on the eye on the right hand corner. So the first point that I have is Rudeas going to Ro. So when we first actually start this chapter, Rudeas is making his way to Ro and getting to meet the people that he's working for, which is the Boris family. Basically, distant family members of the Greyrat family. It is here that you meet some of the members in the Boris family. You get to see Sauros, the grandfather, Philip, the father, and Eris, the daughter. This is just to basically show everyone who this family is, and also the type of family they are. Sauros is a very rowdy person, and basically shouts everything he has to say. But his son is kind of opposite. He's very cool in his demeanor, and makes sure that nothing gets out of control. But Eris, his daughter, actually is like her grandfather. She's very rowdy, and you get to learn that many tutors give up after a couple of days because they can't handle the craziness that she has. And that's basically the first part. Now the second part is Rudeas and Eris Gets kidnapped. So Rudeas wanted to stage a kidnapping for both him and Eris, because it was in a way that Eris could trust Rudeas as her tutor. But it turns out there was actually a big scheme to kidnap Eris and sell her to corrupted nobles and whatnot. Now it is here that you get to learn that she is a brat. She really doesn't listen to anyone. Her first instincts is to just yell for help and not listen to anyone else. It really shows that she's not really a likable character in the beginning. But later on, throughout the time she is kidnapped, she eventually learns to trust Rudeas and realizes that in some circumstances, you can't just yell for help. Sometimes you just need to stay calm and focus on what you're doing at that moment. So after they get rescued, Rudeas eventually is accepted the job and eventually starts tutoring Eris, which leads to the third part, which is, well, Rudeas tutoring Eris. Now the one thing I really like about this part is mostly the progress you get to see and the best that Rudeas is trying to do to make sure that Eris gets enough from her lessons. Because in the beginning, even though she accepted Rudeas as her tutor, she kept running away whenever it was important lessons like reading, writing, and also math. She ran away because she thought those lessons were not important, but she would come in whenever it was time for magic. But eventually, over the course of the volume, Rudeas finds ways to actually make her stay and learn arithmetic and also reading and writing, mostly with the help of Ghislaine. And then after this, we get another point, which is Rudeas, Ghislaine, and Eris explore the city. Now, to explain how we get to here, Rudeas learns that Eris' schedule is pretty busy. She doesn't have a single day where she can have a day off and just do whatever she wants. Every day is the same thing. She learns, she eats, and she basically sleeps. She barely gets any free time, and that's all she can do. But Rudeas eventually explains that if she has a day where she could do whatever she wants, this will also most likely lower the chances of her running off whenever she is doing her lessons. On their first day off, they kind of go around and explore the city itself. Not much is shown of the city except the marketplace, and Rudeas just learning about the prices of things like books and whatnot. So that's all I wanted to say about that part. And now next we got Eris' 10th birthday. So during her 10th birthday, we actually get to see what a noble party is like. a whole bunch of nobles come together and pay their respects to the birthday person. But another thing that they try to do is make sure that she can actually dance properly, so that she doesn't embarrass herself in front of everyone. And one thing that's really cool about this is we get to see a very close moment between Eris and Rudeas. Rudeas, being her tutor, tries his best to make sure that she can actually dance properly, because that's his job as a tutor. And I really do like that at the dancing part, we get to see them actually dance and have fun together. Which honestly, reading the light novel and also comparing it to the anime, I kind of actually like this one where they start dancing straight away instead of her failing at the bit and then Rudeas jumping in to make sure that she didn't embarrass herself. So that was an important part in my opinion. Next, we got Rudeas learning about the world. Now we get to learn a lot about this world in this volume, and I will actually not be talking about it. Well, not here. I will be talking about it in the world building section. All I'll just say is that we learn a lot about history, languages, and all that stuff, and I'll get deeper into that in the world building section. Next, we got Rudeas turning 10. Now, the reason why this is an important part is that it shows the Boris's affection to Rudeas and the process they go through. At first, the Boris family couldn't care less of Rudeas. They thought he was rude. They thought, this is just another tutor. But later on, we get to see a big moment where Rudeas actually acts like he is very shocked, and Sauros tries to start a fight with another family to make sure that Rudeas becomes the head. And although it's made for laughs, it was a pretty cool thing that Sauros really cared about Rudeas that much. And then we also got the part with Eris's mother when he was sad, or acted sad that his family couldn't be there. She really cared about him and would want to actually adopt him, or actually have Eris marry him. It was another bit that was played for laughs, but it was still a pretty cool thing to see in this chapter, just seeing the progress that the family has gone through from not really caring to now caring a lot. And then also another thing we see about this is the struggle that the Boris family has, or most likely Philip has. So Philip tells the story on why Eris's mother has been cold to Rudeas. When her sons were born, they were taken from her, and it was like a tradition that they have. And the reason for it was because they don't want a power struggle, and I will definitely get into it in the world building. But the thing that was really interesting about this part was it played so much as like a Game of Thrones thing that Philip was talking about. So each member of Philip's family would try their best to make sure that they have more political power and try to make sure that they get to be on top of the throne. It was a pretty cool thing that was really interesting and definitely was something I was not expecting, but it brought more complexity to the family. The Greyrats wasn't just Rudeas, Paul, and his wives, and Rudeas' sisters. It was a lot more complex than that. And then finally, I have the final chapters. I decided to put these both in the same part because they're very similar in a sense that that event happens and eventually ends the book just like that. So the event that I'm talking about is the teleportation incident. So the teleportation incident is basically a thing that happens where the whole city of Ro disappears. All the residents have gone elsewhere, nobody knows where they went, but they do think that some people were teleported elsewhere, because many people that were at Ro were teleported elsewhere and came back to eventually see what happened to the city. Now the one thing that really is impactful here is that we get to see Roxy go to Ro. Roxy was kind of a big part in this volume too, not really as much as she was in volume 1, but when she goes to Ro, she eventually sees what happened to it. And the one thing she's worried about is the Greyrat family. Of course I mean Rudeas' family, his mother and his father and all that. Eventually she finds out that there's a chance that he might live, and now she's on her way to go and find them. Of course we find out that Paul and Norn are together, so that's a good thing, but we just don't know where the rest of them are. And yeah, that's all the story moments that I want to talk about. So some characters that we met in this volume are Ghislaine, the sword tutor. Now Ghislaine is a fellow tutor just like Rudeas, but instead her job is to make sure that Eris is well combated in sword fighting. She's also the bodyguard and tries to make sure that the Boras family doesn't get hurt in any way. That's basically her job. But she's not just some ordinary sword tutor who just knows how to do things with the sword. She also tries her best to make sure that the young miss actually gets a good education. And what I mean by that is that during times when Rudeas is tutoring Eris about arithmetic and reading and writing, she actually tells a story to make sure that she actually realizes how important it is to learn all these important skills. And it's a really cool thing that I really like about her character. Next is Philip. Now when we first meet Philip, he's looked at as this guy who is very calm and keeps a cool head no matter what is going on around him. So he's basically the person who tries to make sure that nothing goes out of control. Whenever his father gets angry, whenever something happens where it might get too chaotic, he tries his best to make sure that everything is under control. Now, some interesting things I really do like about him is that we actually get some interesting backstory on the Boras family as a whole. So, Philip was in a political struggle to be the head of the Boras family. He actually lost it to one of his brothers because he kind of lost a political game. Now, it's not something that is guaranteed. In fact, I think they're still doing some sort of Game of Thrones type of thing. And we actually get to learn this later on, and I'll get more into details about it. But that's a really cool thing that we get to learn because it also shows why he's so cool-headed. He's trying his best to make sure that everything goes in a way that will benefit him in the future. Next, we got Sauros, Philip's father, and also Eris's grandfather. Now, when we first meet Sauros, he's seen as this grumpy old man that just yells out because that's what he is. That's just his personality type. But even though he's very loud, he also really deeply cares about his family. After the incident where Eris is kidnapped with Rudeas, he actually thanks Rudeas so much to a point where he actually begs him to help her out with tutoring and whatnot. Now, of course, it's also because he likes to spoil her, and Rudeas is trying to prevent that from happening. But it shows that he's not just a grumpy old man. He really does care about his family. But another part that kind of shows that there might be some more deeper side to him is when Rudeas mentioned his wife. When Rudeas mentioned his wife, he actually was very sad. Instead of shouting out, "Don't ever mention her," he was just like, "I did have a wife, but she's gone now." And it definitely showed that he wasn't just a highly tempered man. Next, we got Hilda, Eris's mother, and Philip's wife. Now, we don't get much of Hilda. In fact, I think the only time we have interactions with her and Rudeas are, I think, twice, which was during his 10th birthday and also once when he was going through the library. Eventually, we learn why she had been very cold to Rudeas. It's because Rudeas brought back memories of her sons being taken from her when they were born. It put a really sad backstory to her because it eventually showed she wasn't being cold because she didn't like Rudeas. She was being cold because she thought it was unfair that someone was able to raise their child while she lost hers because of stupid family traditions. And that was what I got from her. Next we got Roxy, a familiar character. Now Roxy didn't really play a big role in this volume, but she is mentioned to have sent letters to Rudeas, basically telling him what is going on in her life, like how she met a new person to tutor, but the thing is, he is nothing like Rudeas, who tried his best to learn all this stuff. He's just a pervert, and he thinks that he's all that. She does, at the very end, have her moment when she actually goes in and tries to see what happened to Ro, and is now on her journey to make sure that she can actually find the rest of the Greyrat family, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of her in the following volumes. And then finally we got the final person, and I think the most important person of this volume, Eris. Eris is Rudeas' second cousin, and when we first meet her, she is like this built up angry person that just does things now and just forgets about the consequences until the next day. But the one thing I really do like about this volume is it shows her growth. From being a person you really hate to a character that you want to root for. And the one thing that's really cool is that, well, I'll get more into it when I talk about the iconic moments, but at the end of every chapter we get to see her progress from what she was like at the beginning to what she's like at the end. And it's a really cool thing to see all these progresses that she actually has. And yeah, that's all I have to say about the characters. I don't have anything important for Rudeas because I kind of explained it during the story part. That was all the moments he had, so all the story points basically explain it. Now let's get into some world building. So in the world building section I have learned a lot, so I'll try my best to keep it as short as possible, but you'll be surprised how much world building was shown compared to the last volume. So first, the calendar year is 414 AD, or Armored Dragon Era. I'll explain more in the history part, but that's basically the year. And the cool thing about the time in this world is that they have no clocks. Everything's based on mealtime, so breakfast, lunch, snack time, and dinner. And another cool thing about this is that they have months and days, but they don't have weeks, which is really interesting. And what really makes this interesting is that 7 is a lucky number. I would have thought that a week would have made sense because of this. Because, there are 7 days in a week. But apparently that's just how this world is like. So I don't really know why 7 is a lucky number. It could just be a random thing. But this is not the only series to have 7 as a lucky number. Harry Potter has its relevance in 7. There are 7 books in the series. There were 7 known Horcruxes. 7 is considered a powerful number in the wizarding world. Most of the series kind of revolves around that. Of course, this is not Harry Potter, so I'll just stop there. Next, we just got a little bit that was shared, and that is the Beastmen race don't give gifts on their birthdays. So I don't know if birthdays are not that important, or that's just a thing they do in their culture. So that is that. Now, I included this in culture, but we finally got to learn the languages in this world. So what I realized in this world of Mushoku Tensei is that everybody speaks a different language. Humans have their language, beastmen have their own, even other races have their. But they kind of have lame names. It's just mostly human tongue, beast god tongue, fight god tongue, really lame names. It's not something like Sindarin or Quenya or Numenorian, those really nice names that Tolkien gives. They're just basic names that I guess it's just to help the reader distinguish what language is spoken, and it just helps organize it. But I wish there were better names for this. Cool thing about these languages is that depending on where you are, you might have a different dialect. So basically like in real life, where if you live on the western side of the US, you have a different accent than if you lived on the eastern side or the middle part. It kind of makes it more realistic to real life. Also, some continents actually speak multiple languages. I forgot the example, what they put it, but to basically point it out, in America, even though English is a well-known language, depending on where you are, you might actually have some people who speak one language. Like, for example, where I live, there's a lot of people who speak Spanish. So there's a lot of Spanish people speaking here, and you might go somewhere where there's a lot of people who speak French or Mandarin. It just depends on where you are, and that's a really cool thing about that. So that's the final bit of the languages. So the final thing is the head of the Greyrat family will raise all the boys so that other branches of the family will not rebel. So this is a really cool thing. This is a little bit more political than I actually thought, but with the tradition of who's deciding to be the next heir, what it shows is that they take all the heirs of a family branch will be raised by the head of the family so that there won't be some civil war that will happen between the families. I guess to also make sure that the family has claim and is stronger compared to the other families. So that was an interesting tidbit to add. And it showed that there was a political side to this story. Alright, so let's get into the locations. So we are still in the Vitea region on the central continent, but this time we've actually visited Ro. So it is a big city, but surprisingly enough, it is smaller than the countryside where Rudeas was living. His estimated account on how far it is to walk, he said it will take about 2 hours to circle through the whole city. There are walls that surround the city, and he estimates that they're about 7 to 8 meters tall. I actually don't know what that is in yards, so, if you're a mathematician, comment down below what that is. Now, it's not a complete circle, it's bent in with the terrain, so yeah, that's just it. And there's a lot of stores both in and out of the city. We really don't explore much in this city. In fact, we only get like one chapter where we explore what the shops are like and what the prices are, so we don't really get much of exploring in the city. And then the other place we actually go is Wilden, a small little town on the outsides of Ro. We were only here because Rudeas and Eris were kidnapped, so that was just it. We don't know much of it, it's just a smaller town right next to Ro, so yeah, that's it. We don't really meet new races, so I'll just skip to the events. So in this volume, we get a lot of history and events. So if you're not interested in this, I'm sorry, but I'm going to put down everything I learned because it's really interesting. The only little bit I have right now to start off with was Rose Citadel was a fort for the Great War. And with that being said, let's continue on to the Anime Bros history lesson. So, 100,000 years ago, the 7 worlds were born. This was called the Age of the Gods. Each god took a world, and their names are actually not that special. Human god, demon god, dragon god, beast god, sea god, sky god, and baron god. And with the creation of these worlds, barriers were made to prevent others from invading them. Next, we go 2,000 to 10,000 years ago. An evil dragon god destroys all the worlds except for the human world. Now, this is an important part because what this does is eventually explains why there are multiple races in the human world, which is the world we are in. Not much is known. All I remember is that his commanders betrayed him. So yeah, we live in one world because of the evil dragon god. 10,000 to 8,000 years ago, a chaotic era began. Now, not much is known about this time period, but because of this era, we know that a lot of races were separated into where they live now. Beast folk live in the woods, water folk live in the ocean, sky folk live in the mountains, and dragon folk live, well, whatever. We actually don't know much about it. The only ones that remained fighting were the humans and demons. And also during the time, the central and demon continent were called the Great Continent because they were still one giant continent. So 7,000 years ago, the first great human and demon war began. Martial arts and magic were created here, and other races were involved as well. To put in perspective, this was like the First World War. You had the Central Powers and the Allies. Even though the major power was Germany and the Central Powers, and Russia, France, and Britain and the Allies, a lot of other countries were involved in the Great War. So that's basically what I'm comparing it to. So 6,000 years ago, the Great War rages on, with the great hero Arus led his 6 commanders into fighting the 5 great demon kings and the great emperor Kasheraka. Now, I think at this point, this is eventually where the fighting ends of the Great War. So, 1,000-year-long war eventually ends the first great conflict. So, 5,500 years ago, humans fight everyone. And I do mean everyone. So, humans fighting humans fighting beast folk. Humans are just being humans. And demons were caught to be used as slaves. That's kind of what I all put in there. 5,000 years ago, the Second Human-Demon War begins. This is kind of also like World War II. At the end of World War II, Germany was given the blame, and they basically were told that you had to pay everybody the damages that were caused in the Great War. Eventually, the leader that they chose to make sure they fix everything holds a grudge and eventually starts World War II. This is also the same reason for the Great Human War. The demon Kisharaka, which even though you kill them, apparently they revive, holds a grudge with the humans and causes a great global conflict. The demons allied with beast folk and sea folk, pushing the humans into a corner. Now, 42,000 years ago, the humans win the Second Great War. Now, the victory was possible because of a different hero named Aldebaran. His final attack of the war split the Great Continent, making the Central and the Demon Continent that we know today. 4,200 years to 1,000 years ago, the world was at peace for a time. The humans kept the central continent while the demons were forced on the demon continent. And it was not a good deal for the demons. The central continent was a great land that was basically lushful and was a great place to live, while the demon continent was not. It was something that was a living hell. And to make sure that the great demon war would never come, the humans allied with the other races to force the demons to stay on their continent, preventing them from actually going out on an all-out war. Now, 1,000 years ago, the demon god Lepas came into being. Now, the interesting fact about him was that he was the only demon god to be granted the title demon god. He was able to conquer the whole demon continent and is looked fondly upon in the demon culture as a great person to be, which kind of makes sense because he was able to unite his people in a time where it was probably chaotic. Then 500 years ago, Lepas's military campaign began. After winning over the beast folk and sea folk, he eventually invades the central continent. He invaded from the south to make the humans put all their military power there, and then he uses his dragons to make the mountains impossible to go through. Using his force from the north, he separated the human forces and started attacking from the western region. So eventually he becomes the closest demon to actually making sure that the humans actually lose. But 400 years ago, when the humans were cornered, 7 heroes convinced the sea folk to lift a blockade to go to Milis. Milis was able to escape invasion because of the barrier and also because of the Holy Army, with help of the topography, which made it hard for the large army to disembark. The 7 heroes take hostage from the beastfolk clans to force them to change sides, and eventually ending the war after sealing Lepas. The heroes to survive were the Dragon King Europin, Northern God Kalaman, and the Armored Dragon King Perdrius. After the peace treaty, the blockade on the demon continent was lifted, and I think it was to make sure that something like Lepas couldn't happen. And that is basically all the history that we got. It is a very, very long history that was dumped on us in an incredible way. I was not expecting this when reading Volume 2. And just one final thing, Paul's real name is Paul Nodorus Greyrat. And what is interesting about this is that the Boris and the Notis branches of the family have been having a feud for a while, which for those who don't know is the names of both Rudeas and Eris. So it's an interesting thing that Rudeas is teaching Eris. Really interesting. And then other family names is Zephyrus and Irios, just to end it off. So yeah, that was all the world building I was able to place in here. I know it's a lot, but this is what we got in Volume 2. So if you don't like it, I'm sorry, but be glad that it's over right now. Alright, now let's talk about some moments that I really liked in this volume. So the first moment that I want to talk about is Eris and Rudeas' dancing. Now I actually watched the anime before reading this, so I actually have something to compare. So I actually want to say that the light novel actually did this moment really well. In the anime, Eris was failing first with another partner, and then Rudeas came in and helped her look more presentable and actually look like a noble dancing. But instead of having this little moment where Rudeas steps in, Rudeas is actually the first person that Eris is dancing with. And I really do like that. Not only that, but just the whole birthday party where everyone is getting to know Rudeas, and even the second dance at the very end where they go a little bit faster. I really did like that part. In terms of waifus, I do gotta say that Eris is by far my favorite waifu in the Mushoku Tensei series. Even though I kind of already know what happens, I really do like her out of all the waifus we meet. Another moment that I liked is Philip's talk with Rudeas. Now this is where we kind of get to know more about the extension of the Greyrat family. So the other branches of the family like the Notoros and Boris families that we're familiar with. But we also get to learn more of the traditions and what's going on. You know, why Eris doesn't have any other siblings and why the mother was really upset. It was a really big surprise when I learned this, because eventually it showed that everything that Philip is doing is more of a way to gain political power. And it changed this from just, hey, I'm helping a guy out, to I can use you in any way to get myself in a better position in the kingdom. And it was a really cool thing to have this. Sadly, because of the teleportation incident, I don't think we're going to have any more moments like this. This is probably the most political we're going to get. I don't know what the future of the series holds, so if there is more politics in the future, then I'm really looking forward to seeing all that. And then finally, we got the chapter endings. Now, throughout the whole story, at the end of every chapter, we get like a progress bar on Eris's education and her personality. So, this is the first one that we have. Name, Eris B. Greyrat. Occupation, granddaughter of Fierto's liege lord. Personality, fierce. Doesn't always listen to what people say. Reading, writing, she can write her own name. Arithmetic, can use addition. Magic, not interested. Fencing, sword god style, beginner tier. Etiquette, can do Boris style greeting. People she likes. Grandfather and Ghislaine. When we first meet her, she really is a person you really hate. It is something that, out of spoiled brats, I think she is by far the worst. In the beginning, she becomes likable and understands the situation after the kidnapping incident, but not only that, but later on, throughout all the adventures she has with Rudeas, it just shows that she is becoming a better person. And one of the things I really do like seeing is the progress at the very end. Eventually updates on what she can do. She can get better at math, she can get better at reading, even all the magic stuff and the sword play. But the real kicker is actually the final one. So, the final one is name, Eris B. Greyrat. Occupation, granddaughter of Fierto's liege lord. Personality, sometimes violent, sometimes meek, depending on the situation. Does listen properly. Reading/writing, almost perfect. Arithmetic, capable of doing division. Magic, can't do any spells without chanting them. Intermediate tier spells, also a challenge. Fencing, sword god style, advanced tier. Etiquette, currently studying difficult imperial court etiquette. People she likes, grandfather, Ghislaine. Person she loves, Rudeas. Now, throughout the whole chapter, the person she likes, Rudeas, eventually becomes a person on there. But the final bit where it says person she loves and Rudeas is on there, it kind of shows a better bond between the two. Even though Sylphie and Rudeas may have had a good relationship, I definitely agree that Rudeas and Eris had the better one. Especially with a whole volume dedicated to their first relationship, it was definitely by far a great one. And she became a person that I really didn't like, to a person that I honestly hope one day will marry Rudeas and actually live happily ever after. Even though they're second cousins, but this is a different time period, so I guess I can excuse it. But yeah, those were the moments that really stuck out to me. Alright, now it's time to rank this volume. So if I were to rank this volume, I honestly would give it an A. Even though we don't get the different perspectives that we got in volume 1, and the bonus chapter really wasn't something I liked compared to the first one, it was by far way better than volume 1. It had better world building, which was something I really did like in it, and we also got to see the character growth of Eris. Unlike volume 1, which had multiple characters help Rudeas grow, Rudeas helped Eris grow. And not only that, but Ghislaine helped her grow. It was just really cool seeing Eris grow. Like I said, she started off as a person that I honestly could not care about at all, to a girl that I'm hoping one day will win Rudeas' heart. Only the future will tell, and hopefully the future's on my side. But we got so many volumes to go, so maybe we'll have to wait on that. Now, there are still some problems that I have. First off, we didn't get multiple points of view. What I think would have made this a perfect volume is if we got Eris's point of view. In fact, that definitely would have made a really good bonus chapter. Eris's point of view. Yes, I know we get Roxy's point of view and Ghislaine's point of view, but they weren't main characters. In this volume, it was all about Eris. Eris was the person that was growing. Eris was the person that we had our focus on. Eris was involved in everything. Well, except for all that world building. And it really is a shame that we didn't get a perspective of what she was thinking. I definitely would think that would have definitely helped this volume a lot. Especially since the bonus chapter was only there to basically show where Ghislaine was. And yeah, that's all I have to say about volume 2. Alright, and that is the end of this video. If you really enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe for more videos just like this. And come back next time as I talk about volume 3. The world building in this volume definitely was a lot bigger than in volume 1. And I hope we get more leading down the line. And as always, I am the Anime Bro, and see you guys later. Peace!